Atlanta never sleeps, but last night it woke the whole internet. Picture this: Tamar Braxton, the diva, the voice, the drama magnet herself, rushed to the hospital in the dead of night. And no, this isn't a love and hip-hop storyline, cooked up for ratings. This is real blood, real teeth, and real chaos, baby. And who's allegedly standing in the shadows? None other than reality TV's silent king of mess, Mendeecees Harris, and his queen of strategy, the always polished, always calculating Yandy Smith. Oh, and let's not forget the internet's favorite mystery villain, Cousin Kesha, the woman, whose name alone makes fights break out on TikTok reenactments. Now hold up, because you're probably asking the same thing everybody else is. How did Tamar go from sipping wine at Ruth's Chris to posting about waking up in a pool of blood with 4 missing teeth? How did a fun night out flip into a bloody headline faster than Funky Deneva could upload a parody video? And why is everyone suspiciously silent? Tamar silent. Yandy silent. Mendeecees silent. Funky Deneva laughing. Coincidence? Accident? Or the juiciest ATL revenge story the streets have ever whispered? Stick around, because what I'm about to break down will make you question everything you thought you knew about Tamar Braxton, Yandy Smith, and the dangerous art of Atlanta silence. Atlanta is a city that never sleeps, but it is also a city that never forgives and never forgets. A place where secrets are currency, and silence is more powerful than any scream. And on this night, the whispers turned into roars when Tamar Braxton went from clinking wine glasses at a steakhouse to clinging to her life in a hospital bed. The news broke like a lightning strike across social media, and fans who had been scrolling through harmless clips of Tamar laughing just hours earlier were suddenly faced with a bloody confession that she had woken up in a pool of blood with 4 teeth missing and a face fractured beyond recognition. Nobody saw it coming, at least not in the sanitized Instagram stories where the night looked picture perfect. But those who know Atlanta know better, because in this city, fun nights out are always one drink away from disaster. Tamar had been spotted at Ruth's Chris with Funky Deneva, the self-appointed commentator of reality TV culture, who makes his living by laughing at other people's pain, and the two of them looked comfortable sipping wine trading jokes and letting the cameras catch their best angles. But when they decided to extend the evening at V12 Lounge, the energy shifted into something darker. Inside that lounge sat Mendeecees Harris, a man whose silence has always been his weapon, a man who has built a career on standing still, while women around him burned to the ground, and his presence alone was enough to twist the night into scandal. Witnesses claimed Tamar leaned too close to him, her laugh too loud, her hand brushing his arm just long enough for every pair of eyes in the room to lock on them. And in a city like Atlanta, where gossip is faster than Wi-Fi, it was enough to set the stage for chaos. Because where Mendeecees Harris is present, Yandy Smith is never far behind. The woman who has perfected the art of strategy, the queen who plays chess while everyone else is still figuring out checkers, and when she walked into that club, silence swept through the room like a cold wind. There was no need for shouting or violence at first, only that stare, that unbothered, flawless, steady stare that could cut deeper than any words. People swear Tamar smirked first, as if daring Yandy to make a move, and others insist Yandy's calm silence was the true provocation. But either way, the room knew the two women were headed for a collision course that no security guard in Atlanta could stop. Funky Deneva sat nearby smirking in the shadows, maybe rehearsing his next viral video in his mind, maybe waiting to see how far the tension would go, because that is his brand after all, to watch other people unravel and then monetize it for views. It started with words sharp and short, Tamar allegedly snapping, "You got a problem," and Yandy cool as ever, replying, "Do I?" The music still blared, glasses still clinked, but all anyone could hear was the silence between their words. And then, as always in Atlanta, someone says Cousin Kesha appeared. The same Cousin Kesha whose reputation is not built on Instagram posts but on her fists. The same cousin who once stormed a love and hip-hop reunion like a hurricane. Some swear they saw her push Tamar. Others claim a glass flew across the table. Others insist Tamar slammed one down herself. But in the haze of flashing lights and screaming voices, the only thing that mattered was that chaos exploded. Security rushed in, phones shot up to capture the moment. The crowd split into believers and skeptics. But everyone knew they were witnessing something that would ignite the city by morning. Tamar was screaming, Yandy was standing polished and unshaken, Mendeecees leaned back untouched like a man who has mastered surviving in the smoke, and Funky Dineva laughed somewhere in between shock and content creation. When Tamar stormed out of that lounge, social media erupted instantly, hashtags climbing within minutes, TikTok edits recreating her alleged smirk, Twitter users debating who threw the first shade, Instagram flooded with memes of Yandy's stare and Kesha's shadow. The city buzzed, but even then no one predicted the next twist. Because hours later, Tamar herself shattered the calm with a single chilling post. "I almost died," she wrote. "I woke up in a pool of blood. My teeth gone. My body broken." And in that moment, the storyline flipped from gossip to tragedy. The diva who had built a career on never holding her tongue was suddenly silent, reduced to typing broken sentences from a hospital bed. The internet did what it always does, it turned pain into theater. Some fans cried out in sympathy, demanding answers. Others mocked her, calling it karma for playing too close to a married man. And some went further, accusing Yandy of sending cousin Kesha as an enforcer, her weapon of silence sharpened by another's fists. Mendeecees remained silent as ever. No denial, no defense, no outrage. Just the same calculated stillness that has carried him through years of scandal. A silence that only made him look guiltier in the court of public opinion. Yandy posted nothing but curated family photos and polished captions pretending nothing had happened, while the internet screamed her name. Funky Dineva added gasoline to the fire by posting parody memes about himself, mocking accusations that he had drugged Tamar or stolen from her, turning her trauma into comedy like he always does, which only enraged fans who demanded why a supposed friend could laugh while she lay in a hospital bed with missing teeth. And through it all, the question burned hotter with every refresh of the feed. Was Tamar Braxton attacked that night? Did cousin Kesha truly pull up to defend Yandy's honor? Was Mendeecees Harris the silent center of the storm, once again hiding behind the women around him? Or was this all an accident dressed in the clothes of revenge? The city whispered, social media screamed, but the truth remained buried in silence, the one weapon all of them knew how to wield better than anything else. And as Tamar stayed quiet, as Yandy stayed polished, as Mendeecees stayed unreadable, the streets decided their own verdict, because in Atlanta, silence is never innocence. It is guilt painted in gold. By the time morning broke over Atlanta, the story had already spiraled far beyond control, and what had started as whispers in the corners of a nightclub turned into a full-scale internet hurricane that painted Tamar Braxton as both a victim and a villain, depending on who you asked. Social media was divided into camps, some demanding justice for Tamar, who claimed she woke up in blood and brokenness, others saying she brought it on herself by cozying up to Mendeecees Harris, knowing exactly who his wife was, and how Yandy Smith plays the long game of silent strategy. The blogs had a field day. Every platform from gossip pages to YouTube commentary channels scrambled to piece together the puzzle. But the more they tried, the messier it became, because nothing about that night added up. Funky Dineva, who should have been the one voice clearing the air instead, leaned into chaos, posting videos where he laughed about Tamar texting him that she had lost 4 teeth overnight and casually asking if he knew a dentist, brushing it off, like it was no more serious than losing a press on nail. His deflection only poured gasoline on the fire as fans accused him of knowing far more than he was willing to admit, some even claiming his laughter was a cover-up, a smokescreen to hide what really happened inside that club. Anonymous sources began to pop up like mushrooms after rain, each one claiming to have the inside scoop, each one adding more layers to the already twisted story. One alleged insider swore Tamar was drinking heavily that night and collapsed on her own, but fans quickly rejected that theory, pointing out Tamar herself said she woke in blood, not blackout. Another so-called source claimed cousin Kesha was definitely there and had shoved Tamar into a table, leaving her face fractured, while yet another insisted it was a staged altercation meant to boost relevance for all involved. The more voices joined the conversation, the less clear the truth became, but the more entertaining it was for an audience hungry for spectacle. Social media does not need facts. It thrives on chaos, and in the court of public opinion, silence is louder than any denial. Mendeecees Harris said nothing, Yandy Smith said nothing, cousin Kesha stayed off the grid, and Tamar, after her haunting post, disappeared into stillness. Only Funky Dineva kept talking, but his words dripped in mockery instead of concern, making him look complicit in the eyes of many. fans began to dig through old clips of love and hip-hop, revisiting every reunion fight, every heated argument, every shady moment between Yandy and her rivals, and in the process, they built a narrative where this hospital scandal was not an isolated incident, but the inevitable climax of years of silent battles. They posted side-by-side comparisons of Tamar's bloody confession, with old footage of cousin Kesha lunging across a reunion stage, insisting history was repeating itself. Others pulled up screenshots of Yandy's carefully curated Instagram posts from the very next morning, where she posed with her kids and captioned it with messages of love and family, interpreting it as the ultimate flex, the message that she was unbothered, that while Tamar lay broken, she remained polished and untouchable. To them, this was not coincidence. This was strategy, a silent confirmation that she had won without saying a word. Meanwhile, conspiracy theorists had a ball, spinning wild tales that the fight was actually about money laundering through Atlanta, clubs that Tamar knew too much about Mendeecees' side hustles, that Funky Dineva was secretly paid to deflect attention. The more outrageous the theory, the more it spread, because in the digital age, truth is less interesting than spectacle. Hashtags like Bloody Tamar and Kesha Pull It Up trended for days. TikTok reenactments went viral with creators dramatizing the alleged showdown, some playing Tamar screaming, some playing Yandy smirking, others playing cousin Kesha storming in like an avenger of silence. Twitter exploded with threads dissecting body language in grainy clips from that night, speculating whether Mendeecees leaning back with a calm expression meant innocence or guilt. The most chilling piece came from Funky Dineva himself in one of his mocking rants where between jokes he casually admitted Tamar texted him the morning after saying she was missing 4 teeth. Instead of outrage or fear, his reaction was to laugh, and fans could not wrap their heads around it. If your friend told you they woke up toothless and bloodied, would you shrug it off or would you demand answers? Call the police, drive to their side? To the audience, Funky's laughter was not comedy, it was complicity. The internet began to turn on him harder than ever, accusing him of shielding Yandy and Mendeecees, accusing him of being in the car that night and knowing exactly what went down. Through it all, Tamar remained silent, and that silence became deafening. For a woman known for her fiery personality and her refusal to stay quiet in any situation, her sudden muteness only fueled speculation. Was she being silenced by fear, by money, by threats? Or was she planning a bigger reveal, a bombshell interview that would shake Atlanta to its core? Every hour she stayed quiet, the speculation grew, and every meme, every theory, every viral clip added to the narrative that she was not the victim of an accident, but the casualty of revenge. The streets had already decided their truth. Tamar had leaned too close to Mendeecees, Yandy found out. Cousin Kesha handled it, and Funky Dineva laughed it off. Whether or not that was what truly happened did not matter anymore, because perception is power, and in this city, perception becomes reality. Even the few voices urging people to wait for facts were drowned out by the roar of gossip, because who needs facts when silence itself screams louder than any press release? And as the days rolled on without a single statement from Tamar or Yandy or Mendeecees, the internet crowned its villains and its victim, locking them into roles they might never escape. In Atlanta, silence is never neutral. It is always a weapon, and in this scandal, it cut sharper than any blade. As the story deepened and the silence stretched longer, the entire scandal took on a life of its own, becoming less about what actually happened and more about what people believed happened. And in Atlanta, belief is often stronger than truth, because once the streets decide on a narrative, it does not matter how much denial or evidence comes forward, the judgment is already sealed. Tamar Braxton's hospital photos and haunting words about waking up in blood and missing teeth became the centerpiece of the storm, but every day that passed without further detail gave the internet space to weave darker theories. Some claimed Yandy Smith was orchestrating a calculated takedown, letting cousin Kesha be the muscle while she stayed polished in public. Others insisted Mendeecees Harris had slipped into Tamar's orbit willingly, and the altercation was a punishment for crossing boundaries. Meanwhile, the silence of Funky Dineva, who had once been the loudest of them all, began to look like guilt, wrapped in humor. His parody videos now dissected frame by fans who argued that he was mocking the truth to cover his tracks. The outrage reached a fever pitch when old clips surfaced of him laughing at other reality stars' pain, which fans now held up as evidence that he has always thrived on exploiting trauma. By midweek, whispers about legal fallout began. Blogs speculated about police involvement, about lawsuits waiting to be filed, about possible charges if proof ever surfaced that Tamar's injuries came from more than a fall. Anonymous insiders pushed stories that investigators had already visited the lounge to question staff, that surveillance footage might exist, that someone was being paid to keep things quiet. Nothing was confirmed, but confirmation was no longer required, because the entertainment of the story lay in its ambiguity. If a government investigation was rumored, it was enough for headlines. If lawyers were whispered about, it was enough for memes. And if Tamar herself refused to clarify, then her silence was taken as validation that she was protecting herself from something bigger. The idea that her injuries were not an accident but an orchestrated act of revenge became gospel for many fans who insisted Atlanta runs on silence, power, and calculated violence. The longer Yandy Smith kept posting curated family shots and motivational captions, the louder the accusations grew that she was flaunting her victory, that her polished calmness was a message to Tamar and anyone else thinking of testing her boundaries. To her supporters, she was simply staying above the drama, but to her critics, her silence was the loudest confession. Cousin Kesha's absence from social media was interpreted as further proof, because why speak when your reputation already speaks? For you. The internet needed no footage of her swinging fists, no police reports, no official word. Her name alone was enough to convict her in the court of public opinion. Every meme, every viral TikTok, every Instagram thread echoed the same phrase over and over: Kesha pulled up. For Mendeecees Harris, the backlash was perhaps the harshest because his silence had been his survival tactic for years, but this time the strategy backfired. Fans dug into his past scandals, dragging up old accusations of cheating and betrayal, resurfacing clips of him sitting calm while women around him tore each other apart. His refusal to speak now looked less like wisdom and more like cowardice, less like strategy and more like guilt. If he truly cared for Tamar or Yandy, why no statement? Why no denial? Why no public defense? Instead, his muteness fed the narrative that he thrives by letting women fight over him while he emerges untouched, a dangerous pattern that only reinforced the idea that he was the epicenter of chaos. The irony of it all was how quickly real life turned into entertainment. Tamar's missing teeth became punchlines, her hospital confession became TikTok reenactments, Yandy's stare became memes, Mendeecees' silence became GIFs, and Funky Deneva's laughter became reaction clips. What should have been a tragedy was consumed as spectacle, every piece of suffering chopped and edited into content. This is the blurred line of reality television culture, where audiences no longer separate storylines from real blood, where a woman waking up in a pool of blood is treated like another episode in a never-ending season. But beneath the humor, the memes and the speculation was an unshakable unease. Fans began to ask not just who was guilty, but what this said about the entire machine of fame and gossip. Was Tamar silenced by fear, by threats, or by the knowledge that speaking out would only make her trauma into bigger content? Was Yandy proving that silence is more powerful than any rant, that staying still while others scream makes you untouchable? Was Funky Deneva exposing himself as someone who turns pain into profit? And was Mendeecees revealing that his favorite weapon has always been muteness, that he survives by letting others fight his battles? By the end of the week, the story had reached the point where truth no longer mattered. The streets declared Tamar had crossed the line with Mendeecees. Yandy had responded in silence. Cousin Kesha had enforced that silence with fists, and Funky Deneva had laughed it off while Mendeecees floated above it all. Whether that version was fact or fiction was irrelevant, because in Atlanta, silence is not emptiness. It is power, it is strategy, it is survival, and it is confession. Tamar Braxton remained off social media, her silence louder than any live video. Yandy Smith remained curated, her silence polished. Mendeecees Harris remained unreadable, his silence weaponized. Funky Deneva remained sarcastic, his silence replaced with jokes that looked like guilt, and Cousin Kesha remained invisible but more present than anyone. The conclusion was drawn not in courtrooms or hospitals, but in hashtags and memes. The internet shouted one verdict over and over until it became reality. Tamar Braxton did not just fall, she was silenced, and the streets will forever believe that when she lost her teeth, it was because Cousin Kesha pulled up, and Yandy Smith let silence finish the job. So now we are left staring at the smoke of a fire no one wants to claim. Tamar Braxton still silent, Yandy Smith still polished, Mendeecees Harris still unreadable, Funky Deneva still laughing, and Cousin Kesha still a shadow whose presence says more than any post ever could. The truth may never come out because in Atlanta, silence is both the crime and the cover-up, and the louder the internet screams, the quieter the real players get. But let me ask you this. Do you honestly believe Tamar just happened to wake up in blood with 4 teeth missing hours after clashing with Yandy and sitting too close to Mendeecees, or is that too much of a coincidence? Do you really buy Funky? Deneva's laughter as comedy, or does it sound like deflection to you? And most of all, do you think silence is innocence, or is silence the loudest confession of all? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I need to know which side of the story you believe. Was it an accident or was it revenge? And while you are here, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because this is only the beginning of what we are about to uncover.